everyone, it's Laura from Aren'tReallyHouse.com, and today I'm going to do kind of a follow-up video to a video I did last week about the GAPS diet. I came on and I just shared our experience with the GAPS diet. If you missed that video, I will link it down in the description so you can go back and watch it. But basically I just explained why we needed the GAPS diet, and it was because my son got very, very sick and he was in the hospital. We were on antibiotics, steroids, and all this stuff gave him what is known as a leaky gut. And the GAPS diet can help to heal a leaky gut and reverse a ton of stuff. I mean, anything from skin rashes like eczema, psoriasis, acne, to a compromised immune system, fatigue, achy joints. And this is because your gut is the brain of your immune system. So if it's not functioning correctly, you're gonna see a lot of different issues, because that means your whole entire immune system is gonna be whacked out. It is very, very hard to have a perfectly sealed gut. And the GAPS diet is designed to help to heal that if you are experiencing symptoms from a leaky gut like we have in the past. My son did the GAPS diet for 2 years and we saw amazing results. So like I said, I'll link that story if you missed it. But after posting that, I had so many people asking me questions about it and wanting to know, how do I get started on the GAPS diet? So today I want to tell you just a few tips on how to get started with it, and then I'm going to show you guys how to make the most staple recipe in the GAPS diet, which is bone broth. And I'm gonna show you that it is so simple to make and that you can actually make it right in your Instapot. So I'm gonna share that recipe as well. But my first tip with getting started with the GAPS diet, the very first thing you wanna do is grab the GAPS diet book, which I have it linked down in the description below, and it just goes over an overview of the diet and what is going to be expected of you to eat, and goes past all the different stages that you can go through. And then the second thing is start researching and Googling different success stories that people have had with the GAPS diet. So like, our story is just one, but there are so many stories out there. And whenever I was doing the GAPS diet and deciding to start the GAPS diet with my son, seeing all these success stories made the diet way easier, because I felt like what I was doing was actually going to work. Because you're going to see that the GAPS diet is a very restrictive diet, and so it's not gonna be easy. It's not hard in the sense of doing it, it's just hard to stick with it, if that makes sense. Like the actual foods and things that you can eat, it's nothing difficult to make or, you know, difficult to find or anything like that. Like, it's simple, but just sticking with it and being this restrictive for so long can be a little bit difficult. Now, with that being said, it's really important to remember that the GAPS diet is a healing diet. So it's not a diet that you need to be on for the rest of your life. And that was another thing that kind of helped me as we were going through the GAPS diet, knowing that this isn't going to be the way it's going to be forever. But while you're on the GAPS diet, it's really important to stick with it, not to cheat, and do actually what the diet says. And then later on, you'll be able to have a little bit more food freedom. Now, my second tip, and it kind of goes with the first tip, like I'm telling you that you need to read about it, but my second tip is don't read about it too long. The more you research and think about it, it's going to make it sound even more daunting and hard. Just jump in. So definitely educate yourself, but I'm saying like maybe a week, 2 weeks tops. Educate yourself, think about it, go to the grocery store, grab the things you need to, and then just jump in and start it. Because once you get started, it's actually way easier than it sounds. Okay, my third tip, and this one is really, really important. Go through your house and get rid of anything in there that is not on the GAPS approved list, because we don't want temptations. So if you have chips or any kind of like processed foods and crackers and cookies, or even things like oatmeal that can be healthy whenever you're not on the GAPS diet, you need to get rid of all of these things out of your house. Because if you don't have the temptation in your home, it's going to help you to stick to the diet. Head to the store, fill your pantry, fill your refrigerator, fill your freezer with GAPS approved foods, because even though it's considered a GAPS diet, this is not a diet to lose weight. Now, you definitely can lose weight on the GAPS diet because being overweight or even underweight can be a symptom of leaky gut. So when you heal that gut, you are most definitely going to be at your weight that is the best for your body. Diet, a lot of times in our culture and society, means that we are basically starving ourselves so that we need to eat a certain amount of calories, and that is not the case on GAPS diet. There is no reason for you to ever feel hungry. You can always eat anything that's on the approved list. You can eat at any time, and you don't have to worry about feeling hungry. So one thing about the GAPS diet that might be a little shocking, because again, in our culture, we try to stay away from fats and we want low fat foods, and that is not the case with the GAPS diet. Fats are actually very, very important and vital in healing your gut. So healthy fats like avocado oil, coconut oil, butter that is from like grass-fed cows, raw butter is even better, ghee, tallow. These are things that we're definitely gonna want to have around to be using to heal our guts. If you are starting off the GAPS diet and you're in stage 1, you'll see when you read the book that there's several different stages to the GAPS diet. And I can't really tell you like, oh, you're gonna be on stage 1 for 1 week and stage 2 for 2 weeks and then stage 3 for 5 days, because it's really different for every single person, because your leaky gut can be more severe or less severe. And the main kicker here is to listen to your body. So if you're on stage 1 and you start feeling really good and you're kind of ready to move on to the next stage and you introduce a new food and it works well with you, then you're totally great to move up to the next stage. Other people might add in something different and realize that it immediately starts making them bloated or constipated, or they have some type of issue or a breakout on their skin. And that would be a cue that you need to go back to the previous stage and continue on it longer before you move on to the next stage. So the first stage is definitely the hardest stage, and it is just bone broth with very soft boiled vegetables. So now what I want to do is I want to show you guys how easy it is to make bone broth, because when I talk to people about the GAPS diet or about how we eat a lot of bone broth, it seems like so many people are very intimidated by it, and it's definitely something that back in the old days, like if your grandma or even a great grandma is alive and you ask them about it, they are going to think it's crazy that we think that bone broth is this new, you know, cool or hard thing to deal with, because they never ever would have ate a chicken and got rid of the bones ever. Like, that's a whole other meal. So first tip with your bone broth, for me, what I do is after we eat a chicken, which I actually have a chicken carcass in here because when I made a whole chicken last night, we shred all the chicken off the bone, we ate it for dinner, and we also finished it for lunch today. And then I just left the carcass in here, and I didn't start my bone broth. Usually I start it right away, but I didn't start it because I knew I wanted to video it. So this is just a carcass, and down in here is all like the drippings of the meat. That's fine, I'm gonna leave all of this in here, and I just stuck this in the refrigerator overnight. But I also have another carcass here. So what I do a lot of times if I'm not ready to make bone broth, so if I already have bone broth or it's just not time for me to make bone broth again, I will stick my carcass in a Ziploc bag and freeze it. And then throughout the week and any time that I am cooking, I will save any type of vegetable scraps. So if I am peeling a carrot, I'm going to just throw the carrot peels right in with my bone carcass bag in the freezer. Or if I am cooking with some celery and I cut off the ends or the leaves of the celery, I save all that for bone broth. An onion, like the middle core part of the onion that you don't eat when you're sauteing it or cooking it in soups or whatever, I will put that in my bag. So I add in a lot of vegetable scraps in with my bone broth. Now that adds a lot of flavor, and it also adds nutrition to your bone broth. You can also use drumstick chicken bones, you can use the bones, beef bones, you can use fish bones, and you can make whatever amount you want. I usually make a pretty large batch at a time because I have a family of 6, so we eat bone broth pretty quickly. And if you don't use it all, bone broth freezes really well too if you want to make it in bulk and freeze some of it. But all you do is you put in your Instapot some bones, veggie scraps, and then you're going to pour water over top of the bones, and you want your bones to be covered. So that's how I measure it. I don't actually say like, okay, exactly this amount. Now with mine here, because I have some that are frozen, they're clumped together. And so I made this so many times, I kind of know that sometimes like it's not completely covered, almost is, but I know that that's plenty because those bones are all gonna fall apart. It's just clumped up because they're frozen right now. And then I'm going to add in a splash, probably about a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. And the apple cider vinegar is going to help to pull more nutrients from the bone marrow and make your bone broth even more nutritious. And I'm just gonna pop my lid on here. And I just do it on the soup mode for 240 minutes, and then I let it naturally release pressure. Once your broth is done cooking, you're going to strain the bones off of the liquid, and that liquid is now your bone broth. And whenever it goes in the refrigerator and it's cold, it should gel up. And I found that doing it this way, I can get it to gel almost every single time. And that gelatin that's in the bones is what is so good at healing your gut. In the beginning of the GAPS diet, you need to consume a lot of bone broths. The way that you can get it the best, I think, is through soup, but if you don't like soup, or if it's 90 degrees or in the middle of the summer like it is here, sometimes just drinking a cup of bone broth with dinner might be the best way to get it in. So super easy to make. If you guys are getting started on the GAPS diet, this is definitely a recipe that you're gonna want to jot down. Head over to the blog and I have it there. You can print it out and you could also pin it for later. If this is your first time by my channel, please hit that subscribe button. Be on the lookout for more videos on the GAPS diet, and I also share healthy recipes and essential oil education. Thank you so much for stopping by our oily house.